Hey everybody, Foley here for the weekly news recap to the 15th to the 21st of January 2024. So, jump in. This week, Thursday, Xbox held a developer direct where they showed off some of the games that will be on their slate for 2024. So we'll go through them. We have Avowed. Throw the trailer on. Hey Melvin, you getting on? Happy Sunday. For now, until we start thinking about tomorrow. Anyway, so Obsidian, their next game, Avowed, is a first-person. It's Elder Scrolls. It's Obsidian's version of Elder Scrolls, Oblivion or Skyrim or Morrowind, or any of those kind of games. Magic guy, walk around this fantasy land. You have, melee attacks. You have ranged attacks. You have magic attacks. Not for you. Damn it, Melwan. I shall stay off tomorrow. So it is. Avowed is somewhat based on the Pillars of Eternity world. I think it takes place in the same universe, but in a different location. A lot of the developer direct trailers are from the developer's standpoint. It's interspersed with interviews and what have you. So finding gameplay is a little tricky. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it is Skyrim, basically, with possibly better combat. Question would be how much better. I mean, Skyrim combat is pretty bad as it stands, so any improvement on that would be good. I quite like the Pillars of Eternity games, but I've never really been able to get very far in them because I do sort of bounce off them eventually. Just going, I don't like the class I've made like every time. 40 hours in, I don't like my class. I'm starting again. Anyway, we'll see more from them later in the year. This being a first-party Xbox game, it's probably exclusive to Xbox and PC, and you'll see it on Game Pass at some point. Anyway, that's Avowed. Senua Saga Hellblade 2 has a May release date. I'm not going to go into the trailer because it doesn't show us anything new. But I am somewhat worried about Hellblade 2 because we're not seeing anything massively different from Hellblade 1. And they've been this has been in development for 10 years. It certainly looks better. And Hellblade already looked really good. So it certainly looks a lot better, but I'm not seeing a huge gameplay improvement. We'll see. It's out later, May. Visions of Mana, we got a much deeper look at the game. So this was a sort of surprise announcement since it wasn't in the billing. The only billing we had was for Avowed, Hellblade, Ara, their Civilization clone, and the Indiana Jones game that we'll get to in a second. So this was a surprise one, but we already knew about Visions of Mana because it was showing off Game Awards, I guess. So this is the latest in the Mana series. It's been a while since the last Mana game. And the series hadn't been doing well at that point. It had been sort of petering out. So it's been a while, but Square Enix have, I guess, given the green light for them to go back to it. It looks really nice. It's very colorful, very vibrant, and the transition to 3D seemed to have gone really well for them. It is somewhat concerning that it seems to be entirely just one character. There's no party element to it. At least you haven't seen it yet. Maybe that changes later on. Talking about the transition from 2D sprites into 3D characters. I think they probably got a lot of help from the Dragon Quest people because they had to do something very similar to go from their 2D sprites into 3D, and they kept the poses and the people had come to identify as Dragon Quest monsters, and they still somehow kept the pose in 3D. It was really it's actually very impressive how they did it. You do have an animal pal, so obviously this is a day one. This is a day one purchase. So that will be fun. Anyway, that is later this year. I don't remember what the release date they gave was. Goes to sleep and everything. It's just summer. That's what I remembered. All right. Ara History Untold is a grand strategy game, so think Civ or Age of Empires, that kind of thing, but considerably more detailed. Actually, quite pretty looking. I'm not going to go into it because it's just not my type of game, but for people who are into that sort of thing and are burnt out on Civ at this point, maybe they might want to have a change of pace. And then we have Indiana Jones. So Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. We have not seen anything from this game. It had been announced that Bethesda were working on it. This was somewhat of a bait and switch. It's not actually Bethesda who are working on it. Bethesda will be publishing it. It is Machine Games who are working on it. You may not recognize the name, but you'll probably recognize their games. They are responsible for the new Wolfenstein games that are very good first-person shooters. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle will be a first-person game for the vast majority of it, and you beat up Nazis in it. That seems like it's right in Wolfenstein guy's wheelhouse. It's because you added Indiana Jones to your list, of course. I mean, Melwen is a prophet. Like, anytime she has added a game to her short list of games to stream, there's a new announcement of the game. Can you add Legacy of Kain to your list, please? And be like very vocal that you've done that. Anyway, the Great Circle that they're talking about is this sort of theory that a lot of great landmarks and a lot of great works carried out by ancient civilizations, so think like the pyramids, the ziggurats in South America and that kind of thing, that they all form a circle around the globe. Now, I would argue any line around the globe is a circle, but anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's a theory. There's never been like proven that there was some sort of grand conspiracy between all of these ancient civilizations that would have no possible way of communicating with each other. They somehow built them all in a complete circle. Whatever, it's fine. It makes sense for a video game. So they're showing off some of the gameplay. There's this idea that, I mean, you are Indiana Jones, so you will have the whip. You will be beating up Nazis and so on. You will be tomb raiding. I mean, Lara Croft was basically a copy of Indiana Jones. And you'll be going to these different landmarks. So you can see the Pyramids of Giza is one of them. But you'll also be jumping on blimps and that kind of thing. So there are third-person elements to it. And they've said that third-person things come in when you are doing traversal things to give you a better visualization of what you're doing. Which is good because first-person platforming is a nightmare. So yeah, they do also have Harrison Ford's likeness. They do not have his voice because, of course, because Harrison Ford, current day Harrison Ford, just is not up for this shit. He does not care. So it's Troy Baker doing the voice of Indiana Jones. He does a pretty good simulacrum of 80s Ford. He does a pretty good job. Anyway, we'll see how the game turns out. It's out later this year, so we're probably thinking September, maybe December style things. He was never up to that shit. That is kind of true, but I think in the 80s, while Indiana Jones was still in its heyday, I think he would have been up for it. But now, absolutely not. He could not give less of a shit. Anyway, that's out later this year. We have no firm release date, but I'm gonna guess it's either in time for the September end of quarter or Christmas. That'd be my guess. Too grumpy. He's so grumpy. I love it that he's so grumpy, but he is so grumpy. Anyway, that was the showcase for the Developer Direct. All of these games are allegedly coming out this year. May or may not get, they may or may not slip. So some discourse going around about the Indiana Jones games is that people are lamenting that it's first person. They would prefer it would be third person, a la Tomb Raider, Uncharted. And as much as I would enjoy that from like a poetic standpoint, Lara Croft was very much modeled on Indiana Jones. And then Nathan Drake is very much modeled on Lara Croft. And then to have Indiana Jones then modeled on Nathan Drake would be like, This is like a weird circular thing, and it's called the Great Circle and so on. It would have been really good. But I think give them a shot. Machine Head games are very good at first person things. And they're also very good at people punching Nazis. So they make good first person games. I think give them the benefit of the doubt. Would indeed be a full circle. Anyway, other things happening this week. So there are definitely other things I have not added in my update section. There's a couple of games coming out. Reveal has its release date in March. Something else has a release date in February. Fuck. I'm not doing it now. We'll move on. Monthly games. So Xbox Game Pass refresh for this month. So we're going to be looking at Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. So the next game in the Turnip Boy series. Palworld. Palworld as well has been mad. Palworld, I think it's down here. Here it is. Palworld was jumped into early access on PC and early access on Xbox, as it turns out. It is very much Pokemon with guns. Like some of these Pokemon are like you squint and they're like that's an actual Pokemon and not a simulacrum of one or a mimic of one. Like that's Prinplup there on the bottom, like definitely. And that's whatever the fuck the sheep Pokemon is called. I don't know. Anyway, they look exactly like them. It's been doing pretty good on Steam. It is one of very few games that has 1 million concurrent players. Ones that typically would have had that in the past would have been like PUBG, Fortnite, that kind of thing. Servers collapse and 2 million copies exactly. Server, they were not expecting that many people. Basically, that's the gist of that. I think they're okay now, or they're somewhat at least more stable than they were. And then there's some other issues with the PC versions being able to support 32 players, whereas the Xbox version can only support 4. And that is entirely down to dedicated servers. Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo do not do dedicated servers for their games, whereas PC is freely available to do that themselves. So that's the issue. Complain to Microsoft about that one. That has nothing to do with them. Anyway, that may change over time. And it is, of course, early access, so a lot of this stuff is subject to change. Going back to the top of the list, Turnip Boy Robs a Bank is the sequel to Turnip Boy Commits Tax Fraud. It is a very silly adventure game where you play Turnip Boy and he commits crimes. And it's very funny and very dumb. Formula 1 23 replaces Formula 1 22 that was on the Game Pass. I think if you're into Formula 1, you probably already have the game. Go Mecha Ball is something I've been trying to play for a while. Trying to get it to run on Steam Deck, but it hasn't been, which is rather frustrating. But you play a hamster in a hamster ball, and the hamster ball has guns. And, you go about like isometric twin stick shooter style stuff in like an arcade pinball thing. It looks like a lot of fun, but Steam Deck won't play it. It's really annoying. Brotato has been out for a million years, and at this point, you probably own it and don't even realize it. But anyway, top-down roguelike arena shooter where you play a potato with lots of guns, and you fight off various hordes of enemies. Persona 3 Reload is a remaster of Persona 3. Persona 3 is the beginning of the good Personas. A lot of people, fans of the Persona JRPG series, will tell you to start at 3 and ignore 1 and 2. I don't know if that's true, or if that's a good idea, or if that's the case. I don't know, because the only Persona I've ever played is the 5th. But I've heard good things about 3 and 4, so I do need to get around to them. Anuchard I have never heard of. Kingdom of Anuchard has fallen, generations after the collapse, its surviving descendants have chosen you to become the bell wielder of the magical Outros Bell. Okay, go forth, battle monsters, solve puzzles, okay, so it's a fairly by-the-book action-adventure sounding type thing. Okay, if you have Game Pass, they're all going to be available eventually at some stage later on this month. That's some of the games coming soon, but what if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can play Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown that came out on Thursday. Somewhat of a revival of the Prince of Persia series. It has been slumbering for a very long time at this point. 2008 was the last entry in the Prince of Persia series, if you don't count Forgotten Sands, and you shouldn't. That's not true, it's actually okay. But anyway, moving on. It's changing the series a little bit, and it's actually kind of going back to its roots. The original Prince of Persia was a side-scrolling platformer type game. It then eventually changed to a third-person action-adventure type thing with the Sands of Time trilogy, and has now gone back to side-scrolling. But instead of a platformer, it's a Metroidvania. I've played the demo, and the demo is very, very good. To the point that I was considering it for a Let's Play, but now I'm actually just considering I'm just going to play it myself. Because I won't be able to stop myself from playing it. And if I put it on the schedule, every game will be Prince of Persia. So, in the interest of not becoming the Prince of Persia streamer, I'm just gonna play it myself. But yeah, we'll play it as part of my one shots things. You know, you guys can have a look at it there. Bulletstorm VR is a remake of the Bulletstorm game, but fully in VR with full control of both hands and that kind of thing. I'm actually quite excited to play this. I've been looking for developers to just take their old games, and I've said this a couple of times now. Just take your old games and just make them VR. That's all. That's really all VR players want. They don't even necessarily want new games. Just take the game you already have. You have the vast majority of the code for it already. If it's first person, even better. You potentially will have less to do, and just do it. Just make it VR. I don't care if the cutscenes have to be flat screen. That's fine. I don't mind. I prefer if they weren't, but it's fine. It's okay. Anyway. And then last up is Another Code Recollection. So pressing the wrong buttons. Another Code Recollection is a remaster, remake-ish of these two games called Another Code that were never released outside of Japan. I think they were DS titles. They are kind of mystery games. You're like taken to the island, trying to find things about missing parents or something like that. And you encounter ghosts and this sort of thing. Apparently, it's good. I might give this one a look. This might end up on a Foley Fables at some point. It is two games, so it's Another Code 1 and 2. As I said, they never came out outside of Japan, so I don't actually know a whole lot about this series. We'll check it out, though. Why not? Why not? Why shouldn't I do it? Anyway, that's it for the good stuff. Now it's on to the bad stuff. It's time to talk about the worst parts of video games. The video game industry. So the layoffs have not stopped. And I did talk about these ones last week, and that it was still a rumor, so I couldn't talk about it too much, or I didn't want to talk about it because it was a rumor and I was waiting for confirmation. But yes, confirmed that Lost Boys Interactive, who are support studio for Gearbox, worked pretty heavily on the last couple of Borderlands games, and the Wonderlands games have indeed been hit. I don't want to say hit with layoffs because everybody keeps saying that. Fired. They were fired for doing their job. Support studio, which has worked with Gearbox on a number of projects, including Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Gearbox acquired them back in 2022. During the pandemic, its staff grew to over 400 people following the acquisition, and now a lot of them have been let go. Including a former studio producer, who posted on LinkedIn that a sizable portion of the studio has been let go, including himself. To also point out that Gearbox are a subsidiary of the Embracer Group, and the Embracer Group are those people who spent $2 billion without having $2 billion to spend. And now they're firing everybody else except the people who spent the money. Yeah. Also should be pointed out that Wonderlands did really well commercially. Critically, it was kind of okay, but commercially it did very, very well. Made a lot of money. Somehow, I guess it didn't make enough money. Anyway, that's not the only people being laid off. Come on, brain. Thunderful Group, Thunderful Games, to implement restructuring program affecting around 20% of their staff. So Thunderful, you may have not heard of. They are a publisher, but they're responsible for things like Spiritfarer. They're responsible for things like Somerville that we played on the channel. Cozy Grove that we played on the channel, I think, is theirs as well. So there are they do some publishing for some smaller studios. But it's going to lay off a fifth of its workforce. This will be increasing focus on areas with the best future growth and profitability prospects, because that's what we want in video games. We want a company focused on profitability prospects, not games. company that makes games isn't focused on games, it's focused on profit. Okay. Anyway. CI Games lays off 10% of its staff, so this is the parent group who oversaw Lords of the Fallen, amongst a bunch of other games. Lords of the Fallen developer Hexworks and Sniper Ghost Warrior Studio Underdog have also been affected. Lords of the Fallen did really well commercially. It's like the wrong people are being laid off. The people who made you the money are now being let go. Cool. Right, moving on to some other shady news. Square Enix. So this won't be the only thing we talk about with Square Enix. So the CEO last week, possibly the week before, was talking about being more aggressive in their use of AI. This has now been confirmed in Foam Stars. Foam Stars has used AI for a bunch of... I keep saying AI. To be clear, anytime you say AI, there's an asterisk beside it to say it's not actually AI. That's science fiction. It does not exist. It will never exist. For a great number of reasons that we won't get into. But anyway, Foam Stars is using Midjourney, a generative art tool that transforms text prompts into yada 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 to create a small number of art for in-game icons. It was not disclosed what those icons were, but it has been determined since that it was used to make in-game album covers for the game's music tracks. And according to the developer, this represents like a very small percentage of the actual development work, but of course, that small percentage over time will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is bad. Very bad. Not only because obviously people will lose their jobs because of these things, but because they'll become shit. I don't want video games to become shit. No, I want them to be continue to be authored by people who care about medium and not by a robot who's receiving prompts from a business guy who also does not care about video games and only cares about profitability prospects. Anyway, allegedly a small percentage, but it's bad apple ruins the bunch, you know? Continuing to talk about Square Enix, though, Square Enix wants to slim down its lineup. So, Square Enix president plans to slim down Square Enix lineup of titles, highlighted the limited diversity of Square Enix current lineup because they are currently, essentially, they feel they are overly reliant on Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. And they want to diversify a little bit more. The market is increasingly polarized between blockbusters and indie titles, but I feel that we have developed many titles that fall somewhere in the middle. I want to make clear distinctions going forward. Hey, that's okay. It's okay to make double A games, single A games. That's fine. PS2 did really, really well with those type of games. People want more of them. We don't want 500-hour games. We really don't. It's fine to make a 10-hour game, 8-hour game. Cool. Knock yourself out. Churn it out in three years instead of 8 years. Again, totally fine. But it is kind of funny for them to be saying they're overly reliant on Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest when you may remember 2 years ago-ish, Square Enix sold off a ton of their IP for very little money to pump it into NFTs. And then didn't do anything with the NFTs because it was shit. But they sold off Deus Ex, Tomb Raider, Hitman, Legacy of Kain, Just Cause, a lot of other IPs that would have diversified them further. But they sold them, and now they're complaining about the lack of diversity in their games. You did this to yourself, lads. Moving on. Okay, so this is a story that's been going on for a pretty long time now. So this is Epic versus Apple. If you may recall, Epic took Apple to court because they alleged that they were running a closed garden monopoly on their payment services, in that developers for apps on the Apple Store, Play Store, fuck is it called? Whatever. The Apple Store, App Store, something. That developers would have to give Apple 30% of any money that they made, and Epic were alleging that this is a de facto monopoly, and that there should be avenues for people to use third-party payment services and not have to go through Apple. Apple's counterpoint was that, it's our platform. play by our rules. If you don't want to use it, go somewhere else. The courts came down fairly significantly on Apple's side of things, but did allow Epic's kind of idea that there should be a third-party payment option on the App Store. So it has now come to light that the Supreme Court have said, go away. We don't want to hear any more about this. The lower court's decision is the decision we're going to go with. So that's it, effectively. Tim Sweeney of Epic has said, I'm gonna fight this, and I'm gonna take a new lawsuit and find something else to go against them, I guess. But one very shitty, but two also kind of funny thing that Apple have done for the App Store instead is that they have implemented a third-party payment option for developers, as they are now required to do because of this outcome. But instead of them taking a 30% cut, now they take a 27% cut. Which is like, wow, thanks. Appreciate it. Which is really just, obviously, Apple saying fuck you to Epic. I'm surprised they didn't make it 29%, to be honest. There must be like some minimal requirement for it to be 3%, because I can't imagine they went anywhere else with it. But is this the last we'll hear from it? No. Epic are currently also suing Google for effectively the same thing over on the Android side, which makes less sense because there are other Android stores, app stores, Play stores. But for some reason, the courts have come down on Epic's side instead. So there's going to be some conflict because Epic versus Apple, they went with Apple, but Epic versus Google, they're going with Epic. But there's now, what do they call it? This particular ruling should take precedent, which means they should be able to point to this in the Epic versus Google one and say, why is this one okay? But yeah, we haven't heard the end of it. And in Video Game Guy says something stupid and angers the community news. Come on, Kotaku. There we go. Ubisoft wants you to be comfortable not owning your games. Well, that's not going to happen. Philippe Tremblay of Ubisoft has there was an interview that they took with GamesIndustry.biz, say that amongst other things, he was trying to hype up their new subscription service, whatever it's called now. It's gone through so many name changes, I don't know what it is, but it's the Ubisoft Game Pass, effectively. He says, among other things, said that we're trying to get players to be comfortable with not owning their games, because right now they're not comfortable with not owning their games for very good reasons. Because the games disappear, games drop off Game Pass and drop off PlayStation Plus, and you don't get them anymore. I want to be able to smell my games. Exactly, I want that new game smell. Amongst a bunch of other things, this was obviously a big hype thing. Obviously a big hype thing for them to say, hey, just pay the monthly subscription thing to Ubisoft instead, and you can have all 4 games that we make. Thanks. Guess. Ubisoft wishes to see a consumer shift in line with the whole thing where people don't buy music CDs anymore, they go to Spotify, people don't buy DVDs anymore, they go to Netflix, and so on. They're forgetting that the reason people can't buy CDs and DVDs is, one, laptops don't have CD drives anymore. It's a big pain in the hole. Or DVD drives for that matter. And then 2, those shops are gone. If I go to the Dublin High Street now, I can't find DVD shops, really. They've turned into Funko Pop places. And I would be buying physical editions, but I am a older millennial in Ireland, which means I can't afford my own place. So I'm confined to the box room in my parents' house, and it's only so much space in the box room. If I kept buying physical editions, I would wall myself in with bricks of PS4 discs, PS5 discs. Like, I don't think subscription services are going to have the same kind of impact they've had on DVDs or film, TV, music, that kind of thing, because they don't have the same kind of longevity. There aren't enough versions of them. Like, you can buy a film not buy, but you can like watch a film, streaming film, pretty much anywhere. You know, like a lot of them will be on multiple services. Um, Music tracks, again, multiple services you'll be able to get them on. Games, not so much. You know, they are kind of siloed. You know, Nintendo games, you can only really get them on Nintendo, and they don't even have a subscription service. So even there, all by itself, that's that's gonna put paid to the whole subscription thing. Going fully digital, we've already seen enough that the video game industry doesn't have the same kind of archival policy that music and film have. You know, you have like whole music libraries, film libraries, and things like that. Library of Congress, what have you, is archiving like every film ever, every book ever, you know, that kind of thing. They don't do that for video games, for a great number of reasons. Most of them being you need specific hardware a lot of the time to play video games. Like PS3 games have to be played on a PS3. There's no other way to do them currently because Sony prevents you from emulating it. Emulating has its own copyright issues that would need to be ironed out and so on. Whereas film does not have that. You just turn it into a digital file and you're done. End of. Play it on anything. Same with music. And you can also just have the music sheet and play the music on your instruments. It's fine. You can do that too. Books. How hard is it to reprint something? Not particularly difficult. And again, can be read on basically anything. You can read it on your phone, on your tablet, the actual book, a different book, your Kindle, whatever. People can, you know, you can listen to it on audiobook and so on. Games, it's much more difficult to do that kind of thing because of how specific the hardware has to be. So having it go completely digital would be very bad for the industry. Because as we've already seen, we've lost a huge amount of video game history because it wasn't archived. Because people at the time didn't care about archiving their games, or potentially did not have the option of archiving or keeping the source code, or that kind of thing, because they were seen as, you know, children's things and toys, and, you know, who's going to be interested in hanging on to these things for in perpetuity and so on. You know, they weren't seen as cultural artifacts, whereas now they're being seen a little bit more as that, but copyright gets in the way of a lot of these things. Anyway, that all goes to say that they're not going to be comfortable with not owning their games because the industry can't be trusted to preserve video game history currently. Anyway, moving on to some community things. So, Games Done Quick, or Awesome Games Done Quick, is wrapping up today. But some kind of interesting Let's Plays and speedruns have been going on. One of the more interesting ones is Peanut Butter, the Shiba Inu, played a video game fast and did a pretty good job. They didn't quite set a world record, but they did pretty great. There's a link to it there. So obviously they're not, you know, looking at the screen and reacting to what they need to do on the video game. It's obviously their owner is giving them commands to press buttons. You can kind of see their controller there on the left. They just took two giant buttons. They put their paw on. But it is impressive to get a dog to actually apply pressure down, to actually keep the button held down instead of just resting their paw on it. That like requires quite a bit of training to get the dog to do that. It was really impressive. There were one or two flubs, which is obviously why they didn't set a record, but, you know, good job. Good dog. Well done. Anyway, let's leave. Anyway, that is your news for the 15th to 21st of January 2024. We have the Developer Direct showing off the new Indiana Jones game, as well as Hellblade, Avowed, Ara, and Sons of Mana. We have our new games this week: Prince of Persia, Bloodstorm VR, and Another Code Recollection, as well as Xbox Game Pass being refreshed for the second half of the month. Over on the industry bullshit side of things, layoffs continue. They will continue further into the year. Generative LLMs and generative art things are worming their way into the video game industry even further. Square Enix is, a fairly substantial publisher developer, and they are using it in what's going to be their next big game. Oh yeah, I did meant to say Foam Stars is a PlayStation Plus day one thing. If you're interested into that kind of thing, it's a Splatoon clone. So if you like Splatoon and are okay with the whole generative LLM thing, which I am not. Anyway, Supreme Court has told Epic to go away about their Epic versus Apple thing, but we'll probably see more of that from the Epic versus Google side of things. And Ubisoft wants you to be comfortable not owning your games, but the video game industry can't be trusted with that. So, no. Well, I will not be comfortable with not owning my game. I mean, technically, you don't own your games anyway. You own a license to play the game, and that can be revoked at any time. Because capitalism fucking sucks, but here we are. Anyway, that's your news. What's going on the channel next week? So, we have, this is our game card, or our game roadmap, or whatever, for 2024. So, this is what we have so far. So, green, My Friendly Neighborhood, you can see at the bottom, is complete. Finished it this week. Currently ongoing is Final Fantasy III, Resident Evil 2002, and Master Detective Archives Raincode, and Monster Hunter, because goddammit, I will get to it at some point. So this week, we finished My Friendly Neighborhood yesterday. It's a very fun first-person survival horror thing, but the horrors are Muppets, so they're not quite that terrifying. Except for maybe later in the game where they get a little bit mean. Anyway, I really liked it. I thought it was a really fun game. It's a really funny concept. They run with it. They really just go all in on them being Muppets, and you don't even have a gun. You have this kind of makeshift thing that fires paper. The dog Muppets were really fun, enemy type. Some clips say otherwise. Look, I get jump scared easily. Okay, what can I say? Anyway, yeah, I thought it was a really fun game. I'm hoping it comes to consoles soon. Mostly because I just want to play it in a slightly better looking and better performing. We played this on Steam Deck, and it plays it fine, but visually it could probably have been improved. Anyway, that does mean there's now a slot open. So next, after My Friendly Neighborhood, we're going to move into Inscryption, because Melwen might kill me if I don't play. So this has to happen. So history with Inscryption has been, I've been aware of the game, and I've been aware that it is a very well received, a very good game. Community-wise, people seem to really, really like it. The issue has been I am very stubborn, and if somebody tells me you will like the game, that is the best way to get me to never play it. So I have heard from people who I work with and I'm friends with, and are like, "Yo, you should play Inscryption, and don't look up anything about it. Just play the game." And I go, "Oh yeah, okay." No. I do the same thing when people tell me, "Oh, you're gonna like this film." I'll never watch it, ever. This is the best way to do it. But yes, Melwen did convince me, mostly because she banned me from the stream until I had played the game. So Melwen has played through Inscryption over on her channel, and I was told not to watch until I've played it. So yeah, I was banned from the stream whenever Inscryption was being played. But I'll get around to it starting next week. Also, over on the off-stream side of things, I've been playing Lego City Undercover. It's a game I had been wanting to play, and it was like a Wii U exclusive or something for a while. Then it was brought out on other consoles, more modern consoles. But it was a Warner Bros. Game, which means it never went on sale. But it has been added to PlayStation Plus in the last while, so I played it now. It's a Lego game. It's a Lego game. It's fun, it doesn't take itself very seriously. It doesn't take itself seriously in any way whatsoever. It has the kind of more modern Lego comedy where everybody is an absolute dumbass. it does have the kind of Lego game sort of thing where, or at least for me at least, I can only really put up with it for about 2 hours. And then I get, oh, okay, right, I have to destroy more Lego things and pick up more Lego stuff or whatever. So yeah, I'm having to play it in sort of bursts because I can't put up with it for too long a length of time, but I have finished it. It's a fun game. I think it does suffer from what a lot of the more recent Lego games have had, is that their open world sections have too much in them. They're like very dense with just activities and puzzles to do. And you might think, hey, that's a good thing. But it's so much. It's just way, way, way too much. And the Lego games are all about, do all the things, get to 100%, collect all the studs and what have you. And it's too much. I don't have time for this. This is going to take me hundreds of hours. Okay, it probably wouldn't take hundreds of hours, but it's going to take a very long time with me only playing it for like 2 hour bursts. So anyway, it's finished. I might come back to it to do 100% at some point, or just do it in small amounts. All cutscenes. No, I have autoplay off. Why does this keep happening? I think one of my extensions puts autoplay back on. Need to look into that. Anyway, I need a new game to play off stream, which will probably now be Prince of Persia. Once I get around to doing a fully plays Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown a bit. Once that's done, oh boy, that's all I'll be playing for the next while. Anyway, moving on. That's our schedule then for next week. So Rain Code is being moved to the weekend, mostly because it's a very big game and I need more time at it. And I can't devote as much time to it as I want on weekdays. Because, gotta go to bed, get up for work, whereas I don't really have to do that on Saturdays, so I can, do longer streams of that game, because it kind of needs it. There's a lot of exposition in it. Anyway, Tuesday, Final Fantasy 3. We will probably finish Final Fantasy 3 on Tuesday. Feels like we're at the end of it. Beginning Inscription on Wednesday. Thursday, Resident Evil. We'll probably finish Chris's route and possibly start Jill's route. Friday, no stream because I have a work thing on. Well, I'll be doing that instead. And then Saturday, as I said, Rain Code. We'll be continuing on with that. We are moving into chapter 3, I think. No, actually, I think we're still in the middle of chapter 2. I'm not sure. It's a long game. And then we'll be back around to what you're watching right now, which is the weekly news recap. Right. That is it from me for this week, for your news and for your channel updates. Thank you, Melwin, for keeping me company. I was going to say this morning, but this is literally afternoon. Anyway, this afternoon, I suppose. I'm going to get through this stream before the wind really picks up and possibly knocks down some power lines, because it is quite windy here today. Anyway, I'm going to head off. I believe Melwin is streaming Tunic later this evening, so if the internet holds up, possibly I'll see you there in that stream. Otherwise, I'll see you on Tuesday for Final Fantasy 3. Right. Bye-bye.